Welcome to the first in a series of political candidate forums in advance of the August 18th primary election. Now, many of you are familiar with our forums in the past, but this year we are bigger and better than ever. This time, our series is a cooperative production of Capital Region News Collaborative and the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee. Our candidates today are running for the position of Judicial Circuit Judge Group 7. I'm Tom Flanagan from WFSU Public Media, and I'm joined by St. Clair Moraine from Capital Outlook and Danielle Irwin from the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee. We'll be questioning today's candidates on various topics of interest to the voting public.
So we will have several more forums over the next 2 weeks, and other journalists from the Capital Region News Collaborative will be rotating through these seats to ask the questions. In addition to the Capital Outlook and WFSU, you'll also see folks from the Tallahassee Democrat, Tallahassee Reports, WCTV, WTXL on the stage. The collaborative is committed to providing deeper community-centered reporting on local issues. You can learn more about the collaborative at cfn.org/CRN. The candidates for today's race, Judicial Circuit Judge Group 7, are current sitting left to right, alphabetical order, of course, Stephanie Cager, and incumbent Jason Jones.
Reminder for those watching us on social media, please hit the share button and help your friends see today's demonstration live. For those at home, here's how the forums will work. We'll rotate which candidate gets to answer first. We do have a lot of questions, so we ask the candidates to keep their answers to about 45 seconds, sometimes shorter for follow-ups. We will keep time. We have a bell, which we will ding when your time is up. Candidates, you do not have to come to a complete stop, but finish your sentence and we'll move on. We will also have a rapid-fire lightning round of questions with shorter answers later in the broadcast. Any questions before we start? Excellent. Then let's jump in with the first question.
And we shall do that. Many of our audience members may not be as familiar with judicial candidates, and we have heard from a lot of them who want to learn more about your qualifications. So please, in a minute, if you could, tell us about your background and professional experience and what qualifies you for the office. And let's start with Stephanie Cager, please.
Thank you. Good morning. So my name is Stephanie Cager. I am originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. I attended law school at Florida A&M College of Law. I also studied English law with Stetson University in London, England, and French law with the University of Iowa in Bordeaux and France. When I came to Florida, I was so excited about everything that Florida had to offer. It's such a different climate than New Orleans in so many ways. From there and the time that I've been here, I have been in education, I've been in public service, I have been in child welfare where I currently reside today. My most recent position prior to the one I'm in today was the Chief Legal Counsel of Legal Affairs for the Department of Health, where all of the procurement, all of the contracts and transactions, all $3 billion+ went through my team and me. And I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Legal Affairs for the Children's Home Society of Florida. I think I'm qualified for this position because I have a background in trauma-informed care, and I think that can help reduce the rates of the people we see in front of us in the court.
Thank you. Jason Jones, let's learn a little bit about you, please. A minute, sir.
All right, thank you first for the Capital Regional News Collaborative and League of Women Voters for hosting this today. My name is Jason Jones, and I am one of your current circuit court judges. I have been a circuit court judge for a year, and before that I was one of your county court judges for 5 years. I attended FSU Law School, and immediately after graduating FSU Law School, I began my career in the Second Circuit as an assistant state attorney, where I was a litigator in the Gadsden County, Leon County, and Jefferson County offices. As a litigator, I tried over a dozen jury trials. I handled thousands of cases ranging from driving on a suspended license to first-degree murder. And after leaving the state attorney's office, I went to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, where I was ultimately their general counsel, overseeing the entire legal department for a state agency. In 2020, I was appointed to the county bench, and in 2022, I was elected by the voters of Leon County with 68% of the vote to keep that position as one of your Leon County judges. And now, as a circuit court judge, I am a general jurisdiction judge handling all cases in Jefferson County and Leon County. I do probate and guardianship. I have done thousands of trials and hearings, and I am the most qualified person for this job. Thank you.
We just got a good overview from both of you on the kinds of cases that you have worked on in your realm of experience. So let's go to a follow-up, and starting with you, Mr. Jones, could you talk about your judicial philosophy in nice, simple terms?
Sure. A judge should follow the law, and they should be compassionate and respectful when they do that. But a judge's job is to follow the law that is passed by the legislature. Judges should not legislate from the bench. They should not change laws from the bench. So a judge should read the law, apply the law as it is written, but do that with compassion and with respect, which I've done over my 6 years as a judge here in the Second Circuit.
Okay, and again, about 45 seconds for you, Ms. Kazier, your judicial philosophy, please.
Thank you. My judicial philosophy is understanding that anyone that comes into that court system is coming to redress an injury. They are coming, they may be scared, they may be timid, and we want them to show up anyway and to have that moment, to have that voice. We are not lawmakers. We do not make laws. We follow the laws as they're written, and we apply discretion in the places that the lawmakers intended to give us that space and in no other place. We want everyone to be able to come to that court system and be heard, understood, and feel like they had their moment to tell their story.
All right. A follow-up here for both of you, if we could, in 45 seconds. Starting with you, Ms. Kazier, describe what you believe is the fundamental difference between you and the gentleman seated next to you, please, when it comes to the judicial position you're seeking.
Sure. So every position that I have ascended to has been through pure hard work. It has been through hard work. It has been through a panel of multiple people choosing that I'm the best person for this role, and has been assigned more work as I've been placed in that role and higher responsibilities that continue to grow and expand as I move forward. In my time as an attorney and licensed in multiple states, I have skyrocketed through because I have the ability to connect and communicate effectively with everyone that sits before me and everyone that comes before me, whether that is appearing or being an arbiter in any other space. I think for this role, I am the best candidate because I will provide safety, and safety for all people who step into that courtroom, knowing that I got here through hard work and through choice.
Very good. Mr. Jones, please.
Yes. Well, first time I met my opponent was here today, so I don't really know that much about her to say what our major differences are. But I can just tell you that I have always treated everyone fairly. I've always followed the law. I've been a judge for 6 years. I have great support from this community and from attorneys in this community that make up various backgrounds and types of law they practice, various backgrounds in their ethnicity. And that is because I have always been fair and I have always followed the law. I have, too, worked hard for every position I have ever ascended to, which has been a very long career over the 22 years that I've been an attorney. I've been promoted to general counsel of a state agency. I've been appointed twice. I've been elected once by the voters of Leon County, and that is because of my hard work and my dedication to public service.
So, Mr. Jones, we're going to keep you on the mic. Surveys and public discourse indicate a declining public trust in our nation's judicial system. Do you agree with that sentiment? And as a circuit court judge, how do you plan to protect the integrity of your courtroom and restore the public confidence in the rule of law? We have 45 seconds to answer that one.
So I can't speak to the judiciary as a whole, but I can speak to the judge that I have been for the past 6 years. And every day when I step on the bench, I instill confidence in the people who appear before me that I will follow the law, that I will treat them respectfully. And as I've said before, that's obvious by the people who support me in this race. I have overwhelming support. I would invite the voters to please go and look at my campaign committee, my donor list, and you will see a wide variety of people who know that I do the job correctly and I instill confidence in our community every day when I take the bench.
Ms. Kajum?
Thank you. I think when we see declining public trust, we are experiencing a trust deficit. And in that trust deficit, we are experiencing a population that feels like people are not being treated fairly, that they're not being treated equally, and that their voices are not being heard. My job is to step onto the bench and make sure that we soften that blow and try to ultimately eliminate it. We want everyone who steps in front of that bench and steps into that courtroom to feel like they will be heard, they will be acknowledged, and that their issue will be handled in the most respectful way possible. We want to make sure that the public understands that every detail matters and that we will follow the law, written to the letter of the law.
All right, we're going to keep you on the mic again. So, Ms. Kajum, how should a judge approach a question of conflict of interest or essentially recusal?
Thank you. I think conflict of interest should be addressed in a way that starts with honesty. Honesty first and foremost. You know better than anyone else, I know better than anyone else, what cases I need to recuse from or that I need to step away and step aside from. It is up to me to maintain the integrity that I keep within me every day, to step away from anything that will cause a problem. Not just for me, anyone I represent, anyone that steps in front of the courtroom, and any companies that I may have interacted with in the past. We want to make sure that we are continuing a history of fairness in the court and instilling fairness where people may feel that it's a space of injustice. And I think conflict of interest is one of those ways that we do see a situation where people feel like someone may already have made a decision before they arrive.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, I always place myself in the position of the litigants in front of me, and I think if the judge in my case, had the connections to different parties that I do, would I, as a litigant, want that judge to recuse themselves? Or is it just a matter of letting them know about what the possible conflict is and letting them decide whether they want to file the motion to have me recused? I make regular lost the word, but I tell litigants all the time when I have a conflict, either because I know the litigants too well, or as I'm going through this process, the attorneys that appear before me that are also on my campaign committee, I have to let every litigant know that that's the case and then let them decide whether they want to have me recused.
So, Ms. Kager, coming back to you, what steps have you taken to identify and address your own implicit biases that if you are elected, could affect your decision making? 45 seconds on that answer.
Thank you. As someone who works in child welfare, I can tell you one of the biases that I have to work through implicit bias training, through learning more about the community, and through trusting the research and findings, is disparities within socioeconomic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, and parental backgrounds involving mental health. No one is immune to mental health struggles. And sometimes we assume that if a child or a family has X, Y, and Z, that they will thrive. And that's not always the case. And so I try to make sure that because I know that's a space that I and the community at large hold, that we are able to come together to call it out lovingly and respectfully when we see it in the people we work with or our cross-functional partners, and that we are also able to proceed and treat everyone fairly.
Mr. Jones, same questions, 45 seconds, please.
When I was appointed to the bench, I went through an implicit bias and diversion training that was very helpful. But I also grew up in a very diverse community in Key West, Florida. I grew up around a lot of different cultures. And so I am aware of implicit bias, and the key is to make sure that you are aware of it and that you make sure that it doesn't influence any decisions that you make on the bench, that you base your decisions on the law and the facts in front of you and not on any impermissible facts.
Ms. Jones? Next question is judicial activism a widespread problem, and how do you define it?
Judicial activism, I do not believe, is a widespread problem. I would define it as a judge substituting their own personal beliefs for what the law should be instead of what the law is. And so it's very important, just like with implicit bias or with personal beliefs, whether it be political or religious, that you don't let any of those decisions come into the courtroom when you are making your rulings from the bench. They should be based exclusively on the law and the facts.
All right, we got 30 seconds on the same answer, Ms. Cajun.
Okay.
Same question, sorry.
Thank you. Judicial activism can be interpreted by any group as someone being on the bench and making a decision that they do not agree with. We want to make sure that when we're classifying what activism actually is, that it is a deviation from the law as written and not just a party that doesn't agree with the law with the decision that was passed down. We know that we are not lawmakers and that if there's a clear precedent, we follow it.
Okay, we'll move on to issues in the courtroom. Stephanie Cager, we'll begin with you. What legal considerations should guide a judge's analysis of pre-trial release decisions under Florida law? You have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think the pretrial release should be based on what has happened in the past, what precedents have been set in the community, in the circuit, in that county, and taken any factors that have happened in that case, any outside information that has brought through legal channels, that has been brought to our attention through legal channels, and make sure that we are making the decision that is going to best protect our community. We want to make sure that we are not withholding anyone that deserves to spend time not with us, but we also want to make sure that we are equally weighing the competing interest of keeping that community safe and predicting as much as we can what could happen and what the potential outcomes are of both decisions.
Jason Jones, 45 seconds.
So as a county judge, I've made these decisions thousands of times. They're based upon statutory provisions. There are 16 specific provisions that a judge is supposed to look at when determining what is the appropriate release conditions. One of those is safety to the community. One is the person's history. One is their lack of showing up for court. One is their ability to pay. So there are lots of things that a judge has to look at and has to do very quickly at a first appearance on the bench to determine what's the appropriate bond. But I do think it's appropriate for every single case to make sure that every defendant understands why you're doing what you're doing, what decisions you're what facts you're basing your decisions on, and then explain to them what their options are.
Jason Jones, we're going to continue with you for this follow-up. This issue has been a core one in this district with the debate over the impeachment of a colleague of yours on the bench. When the executive branch calls publicly for the impeachment of a judge based on a single controversial ruling, does this cross the line, and how should a judge respond to such political pressures? You have 30 seconds.
It's very unfortunate that people in our position get pressure from political sources on a daily basis. What happened to my colleague is very sad because she made a decision that she was allowed to make based on the discretion that she had at the time that she did it. And there should not be any political pressures to remove a judge for doing their job and exercising the discretion that the law allows them to have.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager.
Thank you. I think this is an opportunity for the judiciary at large to provide education. I think in this space, we did have a judge that had received a great deal of political pressure, but it also received, the case and the statement in general, also received a great deal of media attention. And as I've been out in the community and speaking to voters and people who are familiar with the case, who are learning about the case, who are interested in true crime and other outlets, they are not aware of what factors needed to be considered when making that decision. And this is a great time for us to add more education so that we don't create situations where we're providing undue pressure to someone who may have made the best decision in that space.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager, we'll continue with you for this next question. The Second Judicial Circuit serves a highly diverse population across multiple counties. How do you balance the strict letter of the law with the unique personal and socioeconomic backgrounds of individuals appearing in the courtroom? And you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. One of the benefits that I have is I've worked in child welfare for a number of years. One of the amazing things about child welfare is it gives you the opportunity to see clients, to see families, to see individuals grow and thrive. We have seen all manner of families, backgrounds, and just a diverse community that really come through that system. What we do is to make sure that we look at this through a trauma-informed lens as well as a community-informed lens. And that helps us make sure that we are not only guiding these families and these individuals through what they're experiencing, but also making sure that what we send them to and how we help them is reflective of what's happening within the community at large.
Jason Jones, same question to you.
So the easiest way is to just be compassionate and take into account the fact that everyone is different. In my courtroom, that's simply done by knowing that everyone doesn't have access to transportation, and that public transportation is something that is not run efficiently in our circuit, and some of our counties don't even have it. So it's as simple as giving somebody leeway to be 10 or 15 minutes late to court, or if they come in the middle of a hearing, to start over again so that they get a chance to see and hear everything that happened. That happens pretty regularly, especially when I was a county court judge. So it's about knowing your community, which I've lived in this community for 25 years, so I'm very familiar with our community and our challenges. I'm also familiar with what makes our community great, and I have applied that as a judge for the past 6 years as on the bench.
Thank you. We'll stay with you for this next short question. How do you feel about cameras, whether still or video, in the courtroom? You have 30 seconds.
I welcome cameras in my courtroom. I've had several trials that have been broadcast. I do just try to keep order, so we usually have one camera that's a pool camera and allow everyone to get off of that feed. I usually do ask to identify all of the photographers and media in the courtroom just so that I know where they are and make sure that there's no disruption for the trial itself. But I think it's very important for the public to be able to either come into the courtroom and watch or to watch remotely if necessary.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager, same question.
Thank you. I think cameras in the courtroom give us an opportunity to see inside the court as it's happening. I know people who will spend the entire day watching the cameras, watching the trials. We've got calls about it. We've gotten phone calls about it. I've had TVs in my offices where I've done the exact same thing. I think transparency and trust in the judiciary is built through being able to see what's happening in real time. Our only competing interest in many ways is just making sure that that video does not disparage anyone who's standing before us.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager, we'll stay with you for this next one. While county courts handle minor disputes and local issues, circuit courts handle major civil and criminal matters that can often lead to high-profile appeals. How do you feel if your case is overruled by a higher court, and what does that experience mean for you as a judge? You have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I've had many things overturned and gone against as I have moved throughout my legal career. None of them have been because of neglect. None of them have been because the decision was the wrong decision, but they sometimes have been because a higher power has chosen to go in a different direction. What it does is it gives me the opportunity to take that time to review what I decided and why I decided the way I did, to see if there's anything in that space that I can correct or adjust or learn more about. Having things that are challenged is like peer review. Peer review is something we all go through, and it helps us become stronger practitioners and stronger professionals.
Thank you. Jason Jones, 45 seconds.
So judges have to make very difficult decisions and sometimes on gray areas of the law. We do the best that we can with the information that we have, and a lot of times trial judges have to make decisions in a split second that will affect the entire outcome of a trial. So I do not shy away from being appealed. I think it is good to be challenged and to have your decisions questioned. I have been appealed in my 6 years many, many times, and I'm happy to say I was only overturned once, and that was because I was following the law in the 3rd District Court of Appeal because we did not have a decision in the first DCA, and the first DCA just decided to go a different way. But I was following the law that was the law at the time, and that's the only time in my 6 years that I have been overturned. So I think that's about a 98% approval rate.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about disparities, and this one is a 45-second answer. So we're going to start with Mr. Jones. What do you believe are the causes of the high rate of incarceration of people of color in our communities? Do you believe the Second Judicial Circuit as a whole deals effectively with racial and gender biases?
So I think the disparity that we see is because there's just been a lack of resources in some of our communities that lead people in that community to, through desperation or some other factor, to commit crimes that make them appear at a higher rate in our system. I think that the Second Circuit, as far as the judicial circuit, does a good job. I think that our elected officials could maybe do a better job of trying to keep them out of our system, because once they're in the system, as a judge, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can give grace to people when it is appropriate, and you can help try and explain to people what is going on and why it's happening. But as the judiciary, there's not a whole lot that we can do about trying to solve the root problems.
Ms. Cajo?
Thank you. I think this is largely a systemic problem. In child welfare, we see this starting from children. We see children and families experiencing housing insufficiency, food insufficiency, educational imbalances, access to transportation, access to multiple different outlets that we know historically produce better outcomes. I think as we look at multiple communities and compare, say, one community to another that may have a higher appearance rate, I also think this is a place where we can help with bias training. We oftentimes have reports, whether they're from the Second Circuit or other places, where you'll have different groups that have been charged with the same crime or that have been viewed in the same light, that have not been viewed in the same light. So in that space, we want to make sure that from the bench, we also feed into our community to help heal some of these problems so that we don't see people ultimately end up in the criminal justice system.
Ms. Cajo, we can stay with you. So what do you believe are the causes for the high number of juvenile offenders in the community, and what can the courts do about it? 45 seconds, say your answer, please.
Thank you. I think juvenile offenders are, again, this is a systemic issue. We see some of these issues in our early steps programs. We see some of these issues in our Count the Kicks programs, even, where we have parents who are disengaged from what's happening with the child, oftentimes because they just don't have the resources. The number one reason children end up in foster care is neglect, not necessarily abuse, just neglect. And so I think the judiciary has the opportunity to, again, feed into the community, build in resources, and bring awareness based on your position of visibility to help highlight some of these problems and reduce some of these children that are showing up in our system, even addressing the root causes such as mental health and behavioral health.
Mr. Jones, your response?
So I think it goes back to lack of resources and disengagement of parents. I do juvenile court for both delinquency and dependency in Jefferson County, and that's the greatest issue that I see, is just a disengagement of the parents. Some of it is due to lack of resources, some of it is exasperation because they just don't know how to deal with their children, and that is a place where the court can help. We have lots of services through our juvenile probation that we can try and help get students on the right track. I always try and instill in the young men and women that come before me that while they're in juvenile court, the stakes are fairly low, but if they turn 18 and continue the same path that they're on, that the stakes are going to become very high very quickly. So it's about just trying to turn it around before it gets too late.
All right, stay on the mic. Mr. Jones, we're going to talk about money. According to campaign finance record, you have raised $66,000 in the race, while Stephanie Kager has raised $13,200. What should voters take away from that?
Again, I think that the most important thing to take away from that is to look at who the donors are for each of the candidates. You will see that I am supported by a wide range of attorneys that make up different political backgrounds, racial backgrounds. They're criminal defense attorneys, they're prosecutors, they're plaintiffs' attorneys, they're civil defense attorneys, family law attorneys, probate attorneys, and they all support me because they know that I do a good job, I am fair, and that I follow the law.
Ms. Gager?
Thank you. I am proud of the money we've raised. I am a state worker. Most of my friends and family that I've adopted since I've been here are state workers. So unfortunately, we cannot donate at the same level that the attorneys can. But we still have the same vigor, the same excitement, and the same joy to be in this race. Even though there's a disparity within those campaign funds, there is not a disparity within the vision, within the goal, within the drive, or within the support. So we want to make sure that those numbers are just reflective of disposable income and not necessarily of support at large.
Folks, we've had an awful lot of great information shared here in the past half hour or so, and it has given you a chance to expound on many important issues, and I'm sure you want a little bit of a break, so let's change the pace just a little bit. This is our critically acclaimed lightning round. We're looking for short answers with one word is fine, but one sentence is probably the ideal length on this, and we'll just go back and forth. But again, pithy is the word here. Starting with you, Mr. Jones, which Florida court decision in any Florida court has most impacted the lives of Floridians in your estimation, and why?
I think it would be Gideon versus Wainwright. That created the public defender's office, and I think that that has had the biggest impact. It came out of Florida, and it's had the biggest impact in Florida and throughout the country.
Thank you. Ms. Cager.
I would say Graham v. Florida. It is the case that prohibited sentencing juveniles for non-homicidal crimes to life sentences.
Ms. Cager, sticking with you, the question we are often asked by voters to ask candidates in forums like this usually has little to do with the local judge's race, but it's become a litmus test for them, and it speaks to our democracy at large. Do you have confidence in the outcome of our local, state, and national elections?
Absolutely. I have had the joy and privilege to meet, have lunch with, hang out with, and even before the campaign started, many of the officials who are running for office. We have strict rules based on Canon 7 as to what we can do once we're all legally in the race and we've been qualified for the race. But prior to that, I was still able to interact with them. These are wonderful people. I will not endorse anyone because, of course, we cannot. But I can say that these people.
Okay, I think we had a couple semicolons in there. That's okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Jones, what do you think?
Yes, I do have confidence in the elections, especially the election in 2024, where I won by 68% of the vote.
All righty. And, sir, what, if any, do you think is the role of God or faith in a judge's decision-making process?
So my religion, of course, defines who I am, but I do not use my personal religious beliefs when I make decisions on the bench. I use them to be compassionate towards people and to be kind towards people, but they do not affect whether I follow the law or not.
Okay, Ms. Cager.
I think religion is extremely important in my personal life, and I think it creates respect for everyone else and where they stand with their own religious beliefs. But they're kept separate because religion is not built into the law as it's written.
All right, Stephanie Cager, could you name 3 personal traits that describe the knowledge and disposition that you would bring to the court? Again, count 3.
Okay. The 3 traits that I bring to the bench is a nice, calm, even temper, fairness, and understanding that details matter and that every case is unique. No matter how many times we've seen a similar case, yours is different.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Fairness, compassion, and respect.
Very good. And sir, please, unique question from a reader. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Probably teleportation, so I don't have to go to the airport anymore.
Works for me, Ms. Kaysher.
I am a big comic book person from my dad. And I have had this question, and I've had the answer for this question for many years. My superpower would be Cypher. There's an X-Men that is named Cypher, and Cypher has the ability to communicate with anyone, anything, in every language, whether it's written, spoken, or nonverbal. And I think communication is the key to solving so many problems.
Okay, and apologies to the Marvel group there. Ms. Kaysher, outside of your legal work and legal career, what do you believe has been your biggest contribution to the community?
I think my biggest contribution to the community has been informing, answering questions, and being available. I help with tax law pro bono. I help with entrepreneurs trying to start small businesses. I help with everyone that brings a issue, even if it's, say, student loans is one that I hear a lot, or something that's happening with the DMV. Even though they're non-legal portions of the question, it still gives them the opportunity to feel safe in a space where they're uncomfortable.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
So my entire legal career has been in public service. So I have served the community for 22 years in my job, but I also am a big proponent of mentorship, and so I spend a substantial amount of my free time mentoring students who are thinking about law school or in law school, and I also mentor young attorneys.
So we have concluded our lightning round, and this next question will have 45 seconds to respond. Jason Jones will begin with you. What is your history of community involvement, and do you envision that role changing if you're elected to the bench?
So as I'm already on the bench, my community involvement has been to make sure that the community sees me and knows me, because I don't want the first time that somebody comes before me to have no idea who they're dealing with. So I do try and get out in the community and be involved and go to different events so that everyone has a chance to speak to me and know me as a person before they meet me as a judge.
Stephanie Kager, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think one of my main focuses that I would maintain if I were elected to this position is my dedication to evening out the stakes in many, many ways. One that has captured my heart recently is food insufficiency. Growing up in New Orleans, I saw Hurricane Katrina devastate New Orleans when I was in college, and so through that, a big passion of mine, and the reason that I became a real estate agent many, many, many moons ago was to help prevent housing insecurity and insufficiency. And those two big passions are really ones that feed into our system and that we see as determiners that help move the community forward. It helps create sustainability, and it helps create belonging.
Okay, Stephanie Kager, will continue with you for this follow-up. What role should social media play for judges and judicial candidates, and what guidelines do you put in place? 30 seconds.
Thank you. So with social media, I think it is a wonderful way to connect with the community, to hear some of the concerns for the community, for maybe someone who is not as well-versed or who may not have another avenue to directly connect. But I also think there can be a lot of inflammatory material on social media, and so I think it's important to understand that moving into the bench or maintaining a space in the bench, as will be to years to come, you do become a public figure in the sense that people may see what you choose and they follow that or make decisions based upon.
Jason Jones, next one to you. Are you now, or have you ever been, a member of the Federalist Society? If so, how long have you been a member, and what about the Federalist Society made you want to align yourself with it? You have 30 seconds.
Okay. Yes, I joined the Federalist Society, I believe, in 2019, and it was the first time I had applied to be appointed to the bench, and it was at the recommendation of several people that it was a good way to network with people that were going to be making the decision on the judicial appointments.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager, same to you.
I have not ever had any connections to the Federalist Society at all.
Thank you. St. Clair?
So we're heading down to the home stretch, so to speak, to use a horse racing term. So, question here, what are your thoughts on the role of restorative justice? 30 seconds. And can you guys give a brief explanation of what restorative justice is? Because we hear a lot about it, and a lot of folks don't know, and share your thoughts on it.
Am I going
Yes.
for this one? Okay, sorry. So I think normally when we hear restorative justice, the context that we hear this in is reparations. And I think what we sort of fall away from when we hear reparations is a community that is asking to rebalance and to be brought to an equitable position, even if that at the moment it may not be an equal position. I think we want to evaluate what's happening and what programs and what items and what can we do in that space to restore that equality through equity.
Mr. Jones?
Okay. What restorative justice is, it's rehabilitation of a defendant through reconciliation with the victim. We use it a lot in criminal court. You do have to have the approval of the victim to enter into restorative justice, but we have been very successful in the Second Circuit. I think we've been actively doing it for about a year, and so far it is 100% the people who have entered into it. The defendant has graduated from the program and the charges have been dropped through the reconciliation with the victim.
Thank you for doing that in 30 seconds. Next question is, how would you define injustice, and what do you perceive as the greatest obstacle to justice in 2026? You got a minute on this one, Mr. Jones.
So injustice is decisions that are made based on non-legal reasons, whether it be socioeconomic reasons, ethnic reasons, anything that's not based in the actual letter of the law. And I think the biggest hurdle that we have to justice in our community is financial. People do not have the ability in certain areas to hire the attorneys that they want to hire or simply get to court in a successful way. So I think it is important for judges to make sure that only legal factors are used when making decisions, and grace is given to people when they are not able to get to the system, and also to explain to everyone what is going on and why it is going on, because the folks that cannot be represented by an attorney are often very confused as to what is happening in the courtroom, and it's the judge's responsibility to make sure that they understand.
Ms. Kasia?
I think injustice comes from a lack of fairness and accountability, where people feel like they have been treated differently, and they feel like there has been something that they have missed or that was not given to them. I think as we move through the court and the court systems, and we're focusing on how we can help bring back that equality, that fairness, and that positive perception of the court, we can really look at what we're being told feels like injustice to this group, to this community, to these people, and help balance those scales. It's not always a decision that may be based or not based on another bias. It may be the law as it's applied. We know historically in this country we have had laws that have been perfectly legal that may not have aligned with the moral fabric, that may have aligned through where we see them now, where we see those decisions now. But we do know that that injustice is still something that we may be dealing with, that we may be fighting, and may be trying to rebalance.
Okay, Stephanie Cager, we'll continue on with you for this question. How do you assess Governor DeSantis' impact on the ideological balance of Florida's courts, and what does it mean for access to justice? 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think Governor DeSantis has a broader view and has even though he may fall into this particular group of how he views religion and how that should apply to the justice system, I think it is our job and as a member of the judiciary to make sure we're staying within the letter of the law and that we are not allowing things to detour us from that. We want to make sure that even if there's something that's put forward that we may agree with, that we may not agree with, whether it's ideological or not, that we are still following the letter of the law to the letter of the law.
Thank you. Jason Jones.
Yes, so my experience is that in the appointments processes that I've been through, the most important thing is to make sure that we have judges that are following the law and they're not legislating from the bench. So I do think that his selections have been geared towards making sure that the judges that have been selected follow the law and don't make decisions based on what they think the law should be, but make decisions based on what the law is.
Thank you. We'll continue with you for this next question. What is a judge's role in ensuring all parties appearing before the court are heard respectfully and given a fair opportunity to present their positions, including those without legal representation?
So that's
45 seconds.
That's the most important job a judge does, is to make sure that everyone in the courtroom understands what is going on, why it's happening. It is not to get through it as quickly as possible. It's to make sure that people's voices are heard and that people understand why the decisions that are being made are being made. I take great pains to make sure that as my decision is rendered, I explain to the litigants, whether they're represented or not, why I'm doing the thing that I'm doing, so that they understand. They may not agree with it, but they understand.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager.
Thank you. I think the statistics back up that a large number of the people who appear in Florida courts are unrepresented. We receive cases, subpoenas, everything that you can think of, some that are handwritten, some that are written on line paper, but they are no less important than anything else. I have always said that when I'm on the bench, I may not be able to control what happens. I cannot promise a positive outcome or the outcome that was requested. What I can promise is that you will understand everything that happens to you, all of the options you have, and will not feel rushed or pushed into a decision. I cannot tell you how many people I've met in this circuit and surrounding areas who will say things like, we were given something that was not fair, or the judge rushed us.
Thank you. Stephanie Cager will continue with you for this question. How do you work with staff and other parties to ensure proceedings run smoothly and orders are issued in a timely manner? 45 seconds.
I think calendaring here is important. This is one of those places where I will hire someone and make sure that the person that works with me is better here than I am. Having a judicial assistant that keeps you on track, that makes sure those dates are ironclad and that you're moving at the pace that you need to, is one of the cornerstones of being on the bench. I think there's a lot of focus on the judges without realizing that a great deal of the work, the maintenance, and the support comes from the judge's assistants that helps that courtroom run smoothly.
Jason Jones, same to you.
So my judicial assistant's name is Beth Rissinger, and she is a superstar. She makes sure that I run my office efficiently. She helps me get orders out in a timely manner. Every division that we've transferred into, the number one thing that people say is how quickly our office gets orders back out to folks. And they're always sad if we get moved to a different division. So it is very important to make sure that you are organized and that you are a good case manager to ensure that justice occurs efficiently.
Thank you.
All right. I guess we could say the prosecution rests at this point. And that brings us to our closing arguments, if you will, folks. We will give each of you a minute to talk about your direct appeal to voters. You can plug your website, anything else that you believe, and your judicial opinion to be appropriate for some final comments here during our forum. And if we could start with you, Ms. Cager, please.
Thank you. This has been an amazing experience all the way through. I know state workers, sometimes we are not seen, and I've said it before, I believe we are the heartbeat of Tallahassee. We have the insight and the boots on the ground to both make the changes and to see the direct impact of the decisions that are handed down to us. This is an opportunity for those state workers to have a voice. We may not appear and be as visible, but we are here and we are going to be represented. And this is you guys' opportunity, our opportunity for myself and everyone who works with me to join this crusade so that we can bring more knowledge, more compassion, more fairness to the bench. Every detail matters, and we want to make sure that everyone who steps into that courtroom has an opportunity to be heard, irrespective of their personal backgrounds. My website is Cager for Judge. Please join me, reach out, call, text. I'm happy to chat and just have an opportunity to really connect on a one-on-one basis.
Final word, Mr. Jones.
So the biggest honor of my career has been serving as one of your judges for the past 6 years. I have been a public servant and a state worker for 22 years. I have dedicated my life to public service and serving the people of this community. I encourage everyone listening today to go and speak to an attorney that you know and ask them who they think you should vote for judge. I am confident that they're going to tell you to vote for me because I have done a good job, I am fair to everyone, and I follow the law. So please vote on August 18th to keep me as your circuit judge. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates and to our audiences for joining the Capital Region News Collaborative and the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee for the program. You can find a replay of this forum on our partners' YouTube pages and websites. The recorded broadcast will be aired July 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern on WFSU 88.9 FM, so please tell your friends.
And our next forum will take place this afternoon at 1 p.m. and feature the candidates for Tallahassee City Commission Seat 5, Tiffany Hill, Dot Inman Johnson, and Diane Williams-Cox. You can learn more about the upcoming forum and the collaborative at cfn.org/CRN.
And remember to cast your ballot for these races. You must be a registered voter. The voter registration deadline for the primary is July 20th. Early voting begins August 8th and ends on the 16th. Primary election day takes place on August 18th. Many of our listeners have candidate signs. Once the elections are done, there will be 2 windows to recycle candidate signs. The first is from August 19th and runs to September 18th. There will be another after the general election in November. Just remember your signs, to bring your signs to the specially marked dumpsters at the locations on your screen to keep them out of landfills.
And if you have questions for any of our upcoming forums, please email them to us, news@tallahassee.com. Thank you for joining us again, and have a great day.